I gave Dad a luxury resort trip and $14,000 for his birthday. He didn't say thanks, just smiled. Your sister is essentially the only heir now. Mom added, we signed everything over to her. Officially. I just said, Grandma disagrees. 2 days later, some accounts were paused, the legal documents quietly updated, and their lawyer called me first. Grandma was sitting next to me smiling. When Dad opened the envelope, he didn't flinch. No gasp. No surprise. Just a calm nod, like I'd handed him a utility bill instead of a reservation for an all-inclusive week at the Banyan Tree in Phuket, his dream resort, and a check for $14,000. Mom, sitting beside him, gave me that tight-lipped smile she always reserved for when I outshined my sister, Ellie. How generous of you, she said, as if my gift had inconvenienced her somehow. Then Dad leaned back in his chair, folded the envelope neatly, and said the words that made the blood drain from my face. Your sister is essentially the only heir now. I blinked. What? Mom chimed in before I could even process it. We signed everything over to her. Officially. I sat there, the steak dinner I'd treated them to suddenly turning to ash in my mouth. I'd driven 4 hours just to be there. I'd spent weeks planning the surprise, calculating the finances, pulling from my savings, because, despite everything, I still wanted to believe I mattered. I looked at them, at their smug, detached faces, and quietly said, Grandma disagrees. And that's when Mom's fork paused midair. Dad's smile twitched. 2 days later, I got a call. From their lawyer. Hi. We need to talk, he said. Grandma was sitting beside me, sipping tea. She leaned in and whispered, time to adjust the paperwork. She smiled. And for the first time in years, so did I. Growing up, I always thought loyalty was the currency of love. I paid with obedience, silence, and sacrifice. Ellie, on the other hand, paid with presence. That's all she had to do exist. And somehow, that was enough. She was the miracle child. The one Mom almost lost during a difficult labor, the one whose photo hung in the hallway 3 times, in 3 different frames, while mine was in a single dusty album in a drawer. She cried, she got jewelry. I cried, I got told to toughen up. It didn't matter how much I gave. When Dad's business took a hit during COVID, who sent $10,000 to help him keep the lights on? Me. When Mom needed emergency dental work and didn't want to dip into her vacation fund, that was my savings account too. They never asked directly. They didn't need to. All it took was a phone call, a sigh, a carefully placed comment like, well, I guess we'll just cancel the trip we were planning, unless a miracle happens. I became that miracle, over and over. Meanwhile, Ellie was busy finding herself in Bali, Morocco, and Iceland, one yoga retreat at a time. She hadn't worked a full-time job in 6 years. Her last attempt was a 3-month Etsy shop that sold painted rocks. She once got a PayPal donation from Dad for $3,000 because starting a business is hard. The worst part? I let it happen. I kept telling myself, you're the responsible one. They just need help until things settle down. But things never settled. They just got more comfortable taking. Every birthday, I outdid myself. New car parts for Dad's truck. A spa weekend for Mom. Groceries, repairs, even their streaming subscriptions. I paid for it all. But Ellie? She'd show up with a bottle of cheap wine and a selfie stick and get praised like she was Mother Teresa. And then came Dad's birthday this year. The resort trip was meant to be my final act of love. Not a bribe, not a plea, just something pure. A gift without strings. I booked it months in advance, negotiated the price, even arranged a private guide for their hikes and spa treatments. The $14,000 was meant to be a gesture, a bridge. Instead, I was handed a wrecking ball. We've signed everything over to Ellie. Just like that. No warning. No explanation. Not even a conversation. I wasn't just excluded from the will, I was erased. Dad didn't even look at me when he said it. Just swirled his wine and kept chewing. Like we were talking about the weather. Ellie wasn't even there. She didn't need to be. Her absence was louder than my presence could ever be. She had won by default, again. I drove home in silence that night, knuckles white on the steering wheel, the road blurring with rage. I wasn't even angry at them anymore. I was angry at myself. Angry for the years I'd spent trying to buy their approval. For the 1,000 ways I'd contorted myself into being the good son. The stable one. The dependable one. But something shifted in me the moment I said those words, Grandma disagrees. See, what Mom and Dad didn't know was that Grandma, their own mother, had quietly reached out to me last year. She was getting older, sharper than both of them combined, and sick of how they treated me. She'd seen it all. The favoritism. The financial leeching. Your sister's not the problem, she told me once. Your parents are. She just learned from them. And then she said the thing that shook me to my core. I changed my estate plan. You'll understand why soon. That night after Dad's birthday dinner, I called her. Told her what happened. She didn't say much. Just, I'll take care of it. 2 days later, their accounts started freezing. Their lawyer reached out frantic, sweating. Turns out, the family trust had a few clauses they forgot about. Clauses Grandma had full authority over. Their official signing to Ellie? It had been blocked. Their lawyer called me first, because Grandma made me executor. And that was just the beginning. The lawyer stammered over the phone. It appears there's been a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? That was Rich. What he meant was, you're not in control anymore, and it's scaring loud of us. He tried to smooth it over. Said things like, temporary hold, routine clarification, nothing personal. But when I asked him directly, who has power of attorney now, he paused for a full 6 seconds before saying, technically, your grandmother. Technically. Meanwhile, my parents were blowing up my phone like teenagers. 15 missed calls. 12 texts. One pathetic voice message from Mom whispering, we need to talk. It's not what you think. Not what I think. You made it clear I no longer mattered. That's not exactly ambiguous. They wanted a meeting. Somewhere neutral. I chose Grandma's house. The moment they walked through the door, Mom already had that watery-eyed expression loaded up. Dad had his lawyer face on stoic, cold, fake as ever. Ellie? She wore sunglasses indoors. Probably hungover from her latest healing ceremony. Grandma didn't waste time. She sat at the head of the table, a stack of folders in front of her like a judge ready to deliver sentence. I sat at her right. The seat they used to reserve for Ellie. Let's begin, she said. Dad cleared his throat. I think there's been some overreach. Grandma didn't blink. No, there's been a correction. Mom jumped in. This is a family matter. We can't have the estate disrupted. It is a family matter, Grandma snapped, which is why I took back control. You thought you could rewrite everything and exclude my grandson, the one person in this family who's actually taken care of people. Mom's face turned blotchy. We never excluded him. You made your intentions clear, I said, my voice steady. You looked me in the eye and told me Ellie was the only heir now. After everything I've done, all the money, all the support, you treated me like I was never meant to be involved. Ellie scoffed. Oh, please. You're acting like a martyr. I turned to her slowly. Ellie, I paid for your debt consolidation 3 years ago. You told me it was for medical bills, but it was credit card debt from your trip to Tulum. I know, because I paid it directly to the lender. And I said nothing. She went quiet. You remember that time your apartment flooded and Dad said the landlord was being unfair? I found out the real reason. It was because you never fixed the leak. I paid for the repairs. And when you still got evicted, guess who paid your first and last month at the next place? Ellie froze. For once, she had no response. You always assumed I'd keep bailing you out. That I'd stay quiet. Well, surprise. Grandma slid one of the folders across the table. These are the new documents. The family trust now lists him as primary beneficiary. Not you. Not either of you. She nodded at my parents. I rewrote the distribution clauses. I also revoked the power of attorney you tricked me into signing 2 years ago. Your little retirement plan is canceled. Mom gasped. You can't just. I can, and I did, Grandma snapped. And your lawyer confirmed it. Dad's jaw clenched. So what now? You're going to punish us for everything we've built together. You built nothing with me, Grandma replied icily. Everything I gave you was for our family. You've turned it into a machine for entitlement and vanity. Ellie stood up. This is ridiculous. So what? He gets everything? You're giving him the house? The shares? That's not fair. No, I said calmly. I'm not taking everything. Just what's owed. Mom tried one last Hail Mary. She turned to me, tears finally falling. We didn't mean to hurt you. We thought you'd be okay. You're always the strong one. And that's exactly the problem, I interrupted. You treated my love like it was infinite. Like you could bleed me dry and I'd still show up with gifts. Well, I'm done showing up. I'm not your safety net anymore. Dad slammed his palm on the table. You ungrateful. Grandma stood. At 90, she still commanded a room like a general. You will not raise your voice at him. Not in my house. Not again. Silence. Grandma looked at me and smiled, just a little. We're done here. And just like that, it was over. They left in a swirl of indignation and disbelief. But I stayed behind. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being dismissed. They didn't believe it at first. The shock in their eyes when Grandma closed that folder was almost comical. Like they truly thought their grip on the family fortune was eternal. Like I couldn't possibly have the audacity to fight back. But it didn't stop at that meeting. 3 days later, the dominoes started falling, fast. The family lawyer, who had always been more loyal to Dad than the law itself, quietly sent a letter stating his firm would no longer represent them due to a conflict of interest. Translation: he realized the winning side had changed. Then came the audit. See, Grandma hadn't just rewritten the trust. She'd hired a forensic accountant. Apparently, some of those gifts to Ellie weren't just generous gestures. They were fraudulent withdrawals from a joint family account under the trust umbrella. And worse, some of them had forged consent signatures, including mine. I sat in a meeting with Grandma, 2 attorneys, and the accountant as they laid out exactly how $87,000 had been siphoned in emergency loans that were never reported. Most of it coincidentally lined up with Ellie's sudden spiritual retreats, cosmetic procedures, and that time she went on a 2-month sabbatical in the Maldives. The documents didn't lie. I didn't need revenge. The truth was doing the work for me. By the end of that week, the accounts my parents had depended on were either frozen or restructured. The cozy little retirement they'd been planning, bankrolled by the trust, was now a pipe dream. They'd have to dip into their own savings. You know, like normal people. Dad called once. Left a voicemail. Just one. I hope you're proud of yourself. Proud? No. I was free. Ellie, on the other hand, went into full meltdown mode. She posted a 12-part story on Instagram, crying in her car, about how toxic family structures always try to silence powerful feminine energy, which was hilarious coming from the same woman who once told me I was too sensitive when I asked why she never paid me back for the laptop I bought her. But the best part? The comment section. It was full of people calling her out. Because I posted receipts. Literally. I uploaded proof of payments, emails, and signed IOUs. I didn't even have to write a caption. The screenshots spoke for themselves. Her spiritual followers quickly turned against her. People began questioning her online behavior. Poetic justice? No, it was divine. Meanwhile, my life? It didn't just change, it blossomed. I moved into a place I'd been eyeing for over a year. Nothing flashy, just a sleek 2-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows and a patio that caught the morning sun just right. I bought it in full, no mortgage. Grandma insisted on transferring part of the trust into my name immediately. You've earned your peace, she said. Spend it wisely. So I did. I took 2 months off work. Traveled solo through Italy, Greece, and Croatia. Not for Instagram. Not for clout. Just to feel sunlight on my face in places no one could take from me. I didn't call my parents once. They, however, kept trying. Emails about how family should come together. Messages from Mom asking if I could help with their unexpected medical bills. A birthday card from Dad signed, "Love Always," with no return address. It was too late. Ellie tried her last move 6 weeks later. Showed up at my building, crying, sunglasses off this time. No makeup. Raw and shaking. I need help, she said. They cut me off. Grandma won't talk to me. I didn't gloat. I didn't scream. I just opened the door halfway and said, "Now you know how it feels," and closed it. Click. After that, they stopped trying. I focused on my life. Finally, my own life. Started my consulting firm. Hired 2 staff. Expanded in 6 months. Clients came fast. Word-of-mouth referrals from people who appreciated honesty and follow-through. Traits I had learned the hard way. One evening, as I reviewed contracts in my new office, a letter arrived. Handwritten. From Grandma. It just said, "You did good. I'm proud of you." They thought blood meant obedience. You showed them what loyalty really looks like. Gee, that night, I slept like I hadn't in years. I thought it was over. I thought that by cutting them off, walking away, and reclaiming what was mine, the story had reached its final page. But closure, I've learned, isn't silence. It's not just the absence of conflict. It's understanding why the war existed in the first place. In the months after everything unraveled, I felt something new. It wasn't peace, not at first. It was stillness. The kind of quiet that unnerves you because you're so used to living on emotional alert. No more phone calls asking for favors. No more texts disguised as check-ins that always ended with a request. No guilt traps. No manipulations. I was free. And yet, something kept gnawing at me. Not regret. Not doubt. A question. Why me? Why had I been the one to hold everything up for so long? Why did they trust me with their chaos, but not with their respect? It haunted me. Until one Sunday morning, when I found myself at Grandma's kitchen table again, staring at the same cup of tea she always served. Black, no sugar. You're thinking too hard, she said without looking up from her newspaper. Do you think they ever loved me? I asked. She lowered the paper. They loved what you gave them, she said slowly. That's not the same thing. But didn't they see what they were doing? How they used me? They saw it, she said flatly. They just didn't care. I sat back. Let that truth soak through me like cold rain. You don't owe people anything just because they share your blood, she added. The people who love you prove it through choice, not obligation. I nodded, and for the first time, I believed it. Closure didn't come in one moment. It came in waves. Like when I visited an old friend I hadn't seen in years, someone I'd distanced myself from because I was too busy being the emotional wallet of my family. We laughed like no time had passed, and she said something that stopped me mid-sip of coffee. You seem lighter, like you finally stepped out of someone else's shadow. I had, but I wasn't prepared for what happened next. It started with a message from a name I hadn't seen in over 2 decades, Diana, my father's first wife. I'd barely remembered her growing up. Dad didn't talk about her much, except to say she abandoned the family. But now, here she was, messaging me through LinkedIn, of all places. I read something about the family business online. Thought you should know. You have another sibling. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Another sibling? We arranged to meet. A small cafe. Neutral ground. Diana was older now, of course, but there was something in her eyes. Something familiar. And then he walked in. Tall. My age. Same eyes as mine. Same walk. His name was Mark. Half-brother. He'd grown up across the country. Raised by Diana. No contact with Dad since he was 6. Diana had left not because she was cruel, but because Dad had drained her, emotionally and financially, just like he tried to do to me. Mark was her son from that marriage, and when she refused to sign over her inheritance to support one of Dad's failed ventures, he'd cut them both off. Sound familiar? Mark had watched my story unfold from afar. Watched as Dad and Mom's financial schemes unraveled online. Watched as I became the new version of her, taken for granted and then left out. I always wondered what kind of person he'd raise, Mark said. Turns out, someone of a lot stronger than him. He slid something across the table. A folder. Grandma's not the only one who's been documenting everything. Inside, emails, photos, account records from decades ago. Proof that the manipulation hadn't started with me. Or even with Ellie. It had started long before and followed a pattern. Dad had been running games for years, repeating the same cycle with different people, always blaming them when the well ran dry. He hadn't just tried to exploit me. He'd made a life out of exploiting everyone. But here's the twist. Mark had built his own life, quietly, successfully. Owned a logistics company. No debts. No chaos. He didn't want revenge. He wanted justice. I think it's time to tell the full story, he said. Not just for you. For everyone he hurt. We contacted Grandma. She agreed. Together, we filed a civil case. Not to destroy him, but to expose him. To put the truth on record. When Dad was served those papers, that was the moment his story fell apart. The local press picked it up. Well-known consultant accused of coercive financial abuse inside owned family trust. Headlines. Embarrassment. The truth changed how people saw him. And the best part? He couldn't touch me. Not legally. Not financially. Not emotionally. I stood on the courthouse steps the day of the filing, sunlight pouring down like vindication. Grandma on one side. Mark on the other. 3 generations. 3 survivors. 3 people who had enough. Sometimes, justice doesn't come in the form of jail cells or public shaming. Sometimes, it's knowing the person who tried to silence you no longer holds power. Sometimes, it's the silence in your own home, the kind you earned. Sometimes, it's your phone staying quiet and you not missing the noise. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter. I'm done. I don't owe them anything. Not a cent. Not an apology. Not a return call. What I built on my own. What I reclaimed with truth. And what I know now is this. Being born into a family doesn't make you theirs. being broken by them and still standing. That makes you your own. And I intend to stay that way. Forever.